I think I can safely speak for all of the Duke basketball community. We're excited. This season is not over yet. At least one more game remains for the Blue Devils. But let's play two. Let's find a way to play a couple this upcoming weekend here in Dallas. Let's talk about what's next for Duke as they get set for the Sweet 16 against Houston on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being a part of the show here today. This is our Wednesday, March 27th episode of Locked On Blue Devils as we get set for the Sweet 16 coming up on Friday. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Also, watch us each and every day on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. We have finally done it. We've reached 2,000 subscribers within our YouTube community and so grateful for your support. Please continue to hit that subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. Like it. Do all those things. It means a whole lot when you do that for us. On today's show, our good pal Conor ONeal is back with us to talk about what we just saw this past weekend in Brooklyn, what we need to see out of the Blue Devils on the offensive and defensive end of the floor coming up in the Sweet 16 matchup against Houston. So without further ado, let's bring him on in. Conor ONeal back with us. He has been traveling all over the place, but he's there to bring you the great coverage of Duke Hoops. Conor, thanks for the time as always. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I guess I should start calling you JJ2K based on the in there with the subscriptions.
Yeah,
I really appreciate the play 2 in Dallas because it is opening week.
Right.
I guess there were like 2 random games in Korea that somebody had to tell me were actually counted in the standings, right? But I know my Orioles open up tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, weather pending. So
yeah, no, and Braves country, we're right there for the start of another big league season. So excited to see some baseball back. Duke baseball, I'm sure we'll talk about in the days and weeks to come when we get out of the basketball craze of it all. But we're talking hoops right now. You just went up to the Empire State and saw Duke basketball play their first and second round matchups. We don't really know what to expect when you get into March Madness. That's why we love it each and every year. My alma mater was also on the 4-seed line in this opening tournament, got upset by Yale. You're concerned possibly that can happen for Duke against a Vermont team. Fortunately, it did not. Duke basketball rolls on. Your big takeaways from this past weekend are what, Conor?
My big takeaway is that this team was able to flip a switch from the regular season finale loss to Carolina and the ACC tournament loss to NC State. And, you know, if not for the run that NC State is on, we'd be talking about Duke and how they really have, I hesitate to say turn their season around because they did play 3 really good games in a row, beat Louisville, Virginia, and NC State by a combined 65 points there right at the end of the season. It's not like they had to undergo a massive shift, right? But when the Brights were the lightest, when they were on the biggest stage they've been on so far this year, they played their best basketball. And we can dive into the fact that it was against an America East team and a Sun Belt team. They're certainly going to be discredited for that. They're certainly going to have a step up in going into this week. But you play who's in front of you. And JMU certainly didn't look like the lesser team when they ran Wisconsin off the court on Friday night after Duke's game. So, look, Duke played really, really well. And I guess my takeaway on myself is I must be an idiot because I thought Duke was going to lose a game they won by 38. So, you know, the beat rolls on, and you're seeing this team through a few ups and downs. They're on their way up at the end of the season here.
Yeah, very much so on their way up, which we love to see. And we hope that it continues for a few more games, that it wasn't just kind of a flash in the pan weekend, that we get a couple of more weekends like this of Duke basketball and want to cut down the nets to be national champions there. So as Duke gets set for this Houston game, it is important to look back at why they were able to be so successful in those games against Vermont, and particularly James Madison, because to your point, Conor, a lot of people were really liking that JMU pick over Duke. The line was what, 6.5? I mean, it wasn't the making of a 38-point margin for Duke, but right out of the gates, I think this Blue Devil team set the tone on both the offensive and defensive end of the floor.
Yeah, you just go to the first possession of the game. Duke wins the tip, comes down and gets Kyle Filipowski in the low post. He isn't doubled immediately like he was all game against Vermont. They were doubling on the catch. Some teams prefer to double once the big or whoever's down there gets a dribble or two, and that's what JMU did. And Jared McCain relocates and he's on the wing and gets a clean look, and it's a three. It's right in front of me where I was on the second row of press row there, and I've pointed it out a bunch. I even went digging in my own tweets throughout the season of looking back on when the first time was, and I pinpointed it to January 2nd in the game against Syracuse when they were like 0 for 9 in the first half on threes and then didn't miss in the second half. That was the first time that it really dawned on me that, like, man, when Jared McCain hits the first one, you can basically count on him hitting another 3 or 4. Like, he's just, when he's in the zone, every possession that doesn't feature him getting at least one clean catch and look at the basket is a wasted possession. And he was in that mode from the first possession of the game and filled it up. And when he's clicking, he draws so much attention from the rest of the defense. He opens things up for Kyle Filipowski. The little pocket pass he had in the first half for Filipowski dunk was a big play.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And, if they're helping off of their own man, then when he swings it, a shooter like Tyrese Proctor is going to be open, or Jeremy Roach is going to be open. And that's also, those are great things for Duke. And that's kind of, it's a really simple breakdown when you have one guy hot as Jared McCain was, and how that can kind of bring the rest of the team along and carry your offense, basically.
Yeah, 7 of the 8 3-point makes for McCain were directly off the catch. Only one did he have to kind of improvise and make it work for himself. Duke was getting him wide open, clean looks. Part of the reason Tyrese Proctor settled into his own. You mentioned kind of the outside shooting. He had a turnaround kind of jumper that he had in the mid-range area. I thought that was incredibly impressive in that JMU game. But I thought Tyrese really brought it this past weekend for the Blue Devils as well.
Yeah, when he's on, it changes so much for them. He's so steady and confident. He's such a calming influence on them. I kind of took note of Jeremy Roach running the point, and they moved Tyrese off the ball. I thought that happened after Roach's injury. I don't know if maybe that was something they wanted to make sure that when Jeremy was catching the ball, he was doing it in the backcourt and dribbling up instead of trying to make a tough catch and go against somebody with his dislocated pinky. But yeah, Tyrese has had an interesting season, like we've talked about. I mean, the injuries have slowed him a little bit. I think the pressures of thinking he could be a lottery pick to then people overreacting to a couple bad games in a row and saying that he's going to be back for a junior season. All of a sudden, like, that's a negative. Like, that's what's cracked me up is Duke fans criticizing Tyrese Proctor by saying, "Oh, he's going to be a junior." It's like, isn't that what you want?
Yeah.
Don't you want a talented player to stick around?
I do. Yeah.
Right. But you're seeing him at the end of the season. He's playing with a lot of confidence. I think if I can pull up KenPom right here, he played 40 minutes in 3 consecutive games.
Yeah.
The NC State game, and then the losses to Carolina and State. So him only playing 68 out of the possible 80 minutes in Brooklyn might actually be a
positive.
Good
yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta be a positive.
He got some well-earned rest on the bench there in the second half against the Dukes, again, a Duke guard getting rest against the Dukes.
Gotta love it. Yeah, big win
Throw
for
one
Duke.
one more Duke and Duke's joke in there just for the sake of it.
We need it. And look, also when it comes to be NCAA tournament time, my longest memories in life have always been appreciating what the Blue Devil headband is for each and every game, particularly on the big stage like this. And so for him to have written Dukes across the headband logo with an X over the S, I thought it was a great touch. I don't know that enough people cover those things, but great touch by the Blue Devil mascot there at the game, Conor. I loved it.
It's funny you mentioned that. Michael Lewis, the freelancer that I had up there with me, shout out to him. He actually let me stay in his house out in Long Island. He came back into the media room after one of the days and said he had just seen the Blue Devil and was like, oh, what was written across his headband? Because that's always a fascination of mine. It's not like I go seek him out at home games. It's not like I'm going. I know they featured like the Blue Devil office that's in the basement of Cameron one time, didn't they?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. I don't go down there searching for it for like some inside information 2 hours before games, but when I see the Blue Devil, I always want to look at the headband and see like, okay, what did they come up with for this one? Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? Is it kind of an indifferent one? You know, sometimes when you got those like mid-November games against Bucknell, you might not see the most creative ones. But yeah, I always like to take stock of those.
Call me a homer. I think it's always great, but this one in particular was an amazing touch by the Blue Devil himself. So good work. We'll see what he can cook up against Houston. What we need to cook up right now is a quick timeout. We got to take a break right here, and we'll be back with more of our show in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. The show today is also brought to you by our friends at Better Together. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. It offers a familiar experience for existing DFS players with a social twist. It's giving you the opportunity to play with a friend or teammate. This provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. We love to throw the bets out there, but why not have a team that you can be a part of with our friends at Better Together? It shows that synergy from working together gives you better chances at winning than going at it alone. The team. That's what we're always talking about here at Better Together. It provides your group chat the opportunity to take it to the next level with an amazing shared experience. Download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember to use the code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. Let's move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor ONeal from Devils Illustrated. We're talking about the Duke basketball performance in the first and second round at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and now getting set for a Sweet 16 matchup against Houston. We weren't sure, Conor, who Duke would be playing in the Sweet 16 matchup because Texas A&M made a mad fury in the last 2 minutes to force overtime. Houston was running out of players with everybody fouling out in that overtime period, but ultimately able to get the win.
Yeah, Michael and I literally walked into his house, getting the LIRR back to Long Island, getting back to Port Washington. Walked in, I turned the TV on the guest bedroom. I wanted to get some more work done. The first thing I see is the shot that sends it to overtime. And like when we were walking into the house, he had told me that the score was 82-71. And we were basically thinking like, okay, well, it's Houston. Just like we thought, just like everybody else would have thought. So I turned it on and I was like, oh, what? So yeah, it's one of those where you'd like that to be the first game of a weekend, and you play the team on the other side of their overtime game instead of them getting the extra like 3 or 4 days of rest between games. But yeah, Houston survives. One of the truly elite teams in college basketball this year, and it's going to be a hell of a test for Duke.
I saw the other day for the the fifth time since 1990, all 1 seeds, all 2 seeds still in the mix going to the Sweet 16. And Houston, of course, is one of those 1 seeds. Again, for the fifth time since 1990, all 1 seeds, all 2 seeds. So this does not happen very frequently. We were on the verge of possibly seeing 1 seed Houston get eliminated, but that's who Duke will play coming up on Friday. When you look at that Houston team, a lot of people are talking about the guards and the run that they've been on throughout the course of the season. At certain points throughout this regular season, they were the number 1 team in the country. Played in the Big 12 for the first time really through a full basketball season, and just a really, really impressive team who's had some deeper runs in recent memories under Kelvin Sampson. Talk to me a little bit about what you see when you look at Houston.
Yeah, I see a team that I joked about this back in November, actually, with my dual coverage beat. Wake Forest lost the first game of the Charleston Classic. If they had won it, they would have played Houston. So I wound up, for whatever reason, Wake wasn't playing Houston, but I still watched them a couple times when they were in Charleston. I'm convinced their recruiting strategy is just recruit grown-ass men. Like, they just recruit guys that are built and thick in the upper body. They're not intimidated by anything. Like, they just look like a grown team. They look like a team of 21, 22, 23-year-olds playing against some 18 and 19-year-olds. And it stands out. You can nitpick it and you can say that they're a team that they also want to be as physical as possible and want to test the limits and see how much they're going to get away with and how the game's going to get called. That's certainly going to be at the forefront of my mind in the first 5 to 10 minutes of this game on Friday night. Like, how much freedom of movement does Duke have? Is Jared McCain or Tyrese Proctor getting held off screens? It's going to be worth looking at, but this Houston team, like how Ken Pom shows a brighter shade of green for the more like the higher ranked you are, and brighter shades of red for the lower rank you are. Man, those categories under defense for Houston, there's some really bright green colors, like second in the country in block percentage, second in steal percentage, third in 2-point field goal percentage, and 10th in 3-point field goal percentage. Like, they play really, really great defense that makes you miss a lot of shots against them.
Yeah, very clearly what you're saying is that their school colors might be red, but when we look at the analytics and how successful of a team they've been this season, it's quite the opposite. They're in the green variety what they're able to do. I mean, you look at this team and just the guards that they have, LJ Cryer, Jamal Shed, a lot of those players in particular are brought up quite frequently. You mentioned just their build in itself. It lends you to think that it might be a little bit of a challenge for Duke on the defensive end of the floor with smaller guards in the likes of Jeremy Roach and Jared McCain. Tyrese Proctor, yes, taller, but not built as physically imposing as those are. Am I off there, or what do you make of that kind of guard dynamic?
No, I think you're right. I think you see the heights and weights. It's always interesting to see how they match up. Like I feel like we went into the JMU game saying we were going to see Tyrese Proctor on Terrence Edwards Jr.
Yeah.
And I looked over there and I think Jared McCain had gotten onto him a few times. I think they used Mark Mitchell. I think I think the matchups are so funny because we think we have them all figured out in the 3 days before games, and then they get out there and they might be doing something different. I'm really curious to see the chess match between John Shire and Kelvin Sampson in this one.
Excited to see how it's officiated, like you mentioned a little bit ago as well, because look, Kyle Filipowski's been prone to foul trouble, which could be a bit concerning for the Duke basketball team in their win over Texas A&M. Houston had 4 players fouled out. It's wild to think this past weekend in the round of 32, I saw this brought up as well. Creighton and Oregon go to double overtime and shot a combined 19 free throws, whereas Houston and Texas A&M went to single overtime and shot a combined 75 free throws. It's the same sport, Conor. But again, in a double overtime game, we saw 19 free throws between Creighton and Oregon. Houston plays in 1 against A&M and 75 combined free throw attempts.
That is wild. You talk about it's the same sport. I talk about look, Jared McCain and Mark Mitchell both shoot a 3-pointer. They're doing the same thing. One looks inherently different than the other. I said the same thing about before the Wake Forest game in Winston. I was watching their warm-ups, and Caleb Foster was in one corner and Mark Mitchell was in the other. They're doing the same thing. One shot is going up and down. The other shot is kind of straight lining.
Yeah.
They're both going in.
Yeah.
How much can you really criticize it if they're both going in?
And this is the same sport. 10 players on the floor made up of 2 teams of 5. And sometimes fouls are called a whole lot, and sometimes they're not. Need for Duke to make down free throws and some of those more obvious things. So really excited to see this game unfold on Friday, particularly Duke's performance on the defensive end of the floor, and some other final thoughts from Conor ONeal. But first, we'll take one more timeout here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at Amazon. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you could plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball that's coming up, again, let's go Braves, excited to see the Braves open up the season, or the college basketball tournament that's taking place, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. They recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supplies of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more. And not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out the Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnTV. Again, Amazon.com/LockedOnFire TV. The show today is also brought to you by our friends at Nissan. It's March Madness, of course. So this week's Nissan March Madness bracket highlights, where we're going to highlight one team each week that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like all of the new 2024 Nissan SUVs, we're talking about the Armada, Pathfinder, and Rogue. And our friends at Nissan this week want to highlight the Iowa State Cyclones that can only be described as a Nissan Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a name for themselves, entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country. They've got a date with Illinois this Thursday in the Sweet 16. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, let's wind down today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson, alongside my pal Conor ONeal from Devils Illustrated, Duke.Rivals.com. I want people to be a part of that community, Conor. Continue to support the work that you've got going on. I love the coverage. Tell us a little bit about your work and how exactly can people get plugged in?
Yeah, over on Devils Illustrated, Duke.Rivals.com. we're running a deal right now where if you go sign up and use the promo code Duke16, it's all caps DUKE and then 16, you get 50% off your first year of membership. So it's about $8.33 a month for a
do it.
membership.
You won't regret it.
That's gonna knock you down to $416, $417 in that range for a month. And look, I made it to New York. Not all of the Duke beat made it to New York. I did. I'll be in Dallas, traveling later today or yesterday, depending on when you listen to the episode. And I can't stress enough how important objective and in-depth analysis coverage is. And so I did a story. Did a story on the train back from New York about putting the Tennessee game to rest with how Duke played in the second round game against JMU. Had some really nice insight from Mark Mitchell and Tyrese Proctor on that, since they both went through it, obviously with different perspectives on the Tennessee game. And more stuff like that is coming later this week.
Go check it out, duke.rivals.com, and on social media on X, Conor ONeal _DI. All right, so we're talking about what Duke was able to do on the defensive end of the floor in the first and second round game. Starting with Vermont first, only 47 points the Catamounts were able to score. How did Duke get it done?
They played really I keep going to the most important thing with this Duke team and their defense is playing connected, because they switch so often. You have to be in constant communication. You have to be talking all the time. And I don't think they did a very good job of that I keep wanting to say in NC State. They didn't play NC State in NC State.
Tournament,
At NC State, they actually did a good job of it. That was the last time they had done a good job of it before this past weekend. They didn't do a good job of it in the ACC tournament. And I don't know that they did that great a job of it against UNC. But Vermont and James Madison were a different story. They were talking. Look, Kyle Filipowski is never going to be mistaken for Derek Lively, but Vermont really wanted to get their perimeter guys matched up against him on the outside and put him on an island and make him defend 20 feet from the basket. And that was something that Derek Lively was like 10 out of 10. He's plus. Like, he was excellent in that for the last 2 months last year. Again, that's not Kyle Filipowski, but he held his own. Like, he was good. To very good in those situations. And so Vermont's expending all this energy to get the matchup that they want and unable to score. There's both the fact that you're not letting them score, and there's also the fact that Vermont is doing everything that they want to do to get the matchup, and then they're not able to take advantage of the matchup. That's a psychological win for Duke in those situations. You're beating your opponent both on the scoreboard, and you're beating them in the mind of, yeah, you can try to target our guy. Our guy is just better than what you think he is. So that was my main takeaway from Duke's defense this weekend.
And for me, in that Vermont game in particular, the offense wasn't always great from Duke, right? There was a lot of doubling flip, and then Duke kind of being out of sorts and how to get him involved. And Filipowski only takes one total shot, and you had no idea really that was happening on the offensive end based on what Duke was doing defensively. And too many times in college basketball, I think you can pick up on those things, because poor offense can lead to sometimes poor effort on the defensive end of the floor. And that just was not the case in that game in particular. All right, let's turn over to JMU before we get out of here. On the defensive end of the floor, what was impressive there from Duke?
I thought the transition stuff, like Duke got out and ran JMU. Duke, and that was kind of, we thought we were going to see it the other way around. We thought JMU was going to be the one to throw the first punch and come out and run and get easy offense against Duke. And Duke kind of flipped that switch. And that's what JMU was able to do against Wisconsin. Duke was able to do to JMU and kind of serve them up and get out in transition. Mark Mitchell and Jalen Blakes both went for their life-ending dunks. They both get one shot at those a game. I hope Jalen is okay.
Sure. Didn't look pretty. Yeah.
everybody in the building knew what was coming. If you've watched like any of Jalen Blake's, because Jeremy Roach throws in the ball on a fast break, and it doesn't matter if it's a 25-point game, he's still going to go up and try to do something like spectacular.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one that you could see coming a mile away, and then it still looked awful when you knew the result was possible, and still it happens. But yeah, Duke attacking in transition was really impressive to me against JMU.
And in terms of the defense, Conor, can we say this? Duke made 52% of their shots, 50% from three, made baskets, give you a little bit more time to get back and set up, as opposed to being caught up in the transition. I mean, again, both ends of the floor kind of working with one another.
And I think, if I'm remembering the stat correctly, at halftime, Duke had 7 offensive rebounds and 13 second chance points. So that goes again to what I'm talking about with the psychological wins. When you're able to get a couple of those were long rebounds too, like, picked up by Jeremy Roach and Tyrese Proctor when they're at the 3-point line, and they're not even crashing. Like, Duke typically just sends 2 guys to the offensive rebound. If Mark Mitchell can get a clean look and get inside, if Flip, same thing, they'll try to get tap outs every once in a while, but the guards don't really offensive rebound. And when you're able to get long rebounds and then turn them into threes, it's really easy to play good defense, right? Like, you're taking a long shot and then you're making the 3-pointer that you might have missed one earlier. I think 2 of their offensive rebounds turned into threes. And there's the Jay Billis quote of the best time to take a 3 is after an offensive rebound. I do believe that. And I think Duke believes it too. That's why you see him shoot it a bunch. And that was, it's really easy to play good defense when you're doing that kind of stuff on the offensive end.
Great stuff per usual. I want people to be plugged in with what you got going on over at Devils Illustrated. Again, duke.rivals.com, Duke16 for 50% off a year subscription. Let's leave predictions and that sort of thing for the website. I want people to go over there and find reasons to be plugged in with what you got going on. But let me end with this. Tell me this, Conor. Duke wins. Duke is in the Elite Eight. If what happens? What are the big things that need to happen in this matchup with Houston?
I would say the big things are you need to control the boards and you need to take care of the ball. I'm looking, Houston turns teams over about 1 out of every 4 possessions. Duke has been really good at avoiding turnovers this year. Like, even in some of the losses, turnovers have not been the reason. Turnovers cannot kill Duke in this game.
I love it. Let's make it happen. Let's see what happens, and we'll be following your work, of course. Safe travels to Dallas. Enjoy this weekend. Hopefully you're there for a couple of Duke basketball victories. Conor, thank you for the time as always.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor ONeal, Devils Illustrated. Check out the work. Again, duke.rivals.com and on X at Conor ONeal_DI. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_ and follow the show at LO_Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. Please be sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And also make sure that you watch our show on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.